A film about the Great Sahara Desert, shimmering with heat and mystery. But what kind of a film is it? Is it a love story? Maybe it's a comedy. Actually, it's an epic adventure story about a celebrated British soldier, Lawrence of Arabia. The music score by Maurice Jarre tells us exactly what kind of film it is. In Alfred Hitchcock's macabre masterpiece, Psycho, Janet Leigh drives towards the Bates Motel in a horrible death. Without music, she's just a lady in a car looking for somewhere to stop. If Janet could hear Bernard Herrmann's ominous music, she wouldn't go anywhere near that motel. Every movie has a music score. So do television shows, cartoons, commercials, and documentaries. Hello, I'm Randy Newman, and I write music for movies. Why do films need music? Well, we've put that question to a wide range of composers, filmmakers, and music specialists, and I think you'll find their answers are as varied as the music they create. An orchestra warms up at a scoring session, the film composer's moment of truth. This is where you find out how the music fits the picture. Because movies have always needed music. There never really were silent movies. Even in the days of the Nickelodeon, an upright piano would drown out the noise of the projector. But from this crude beginning, an art form was born. The writing of music that would affect what you see by what you hear. Our story begins, believe it or not, at the Library of Congress in Washington, D.C.
The Library of Congress has every kind of music imaginable. It's probably the largest music library in the world, and that certainly goes for film music. Most of the history of silent film has been written without reference to the role that music plays in the reception of the film.
In the beginning, there was silent film music, with which I was very familiar because my dad conducted for silent films, and it had an eloquence that I'm convinced that nothing else since has ever had.
We don't have to convince ourselves over and over again that film needs music. I think we run film without music, and it tells us every time, as the silence told us. The silent films told our fathers and grandfathers that something needed to accompany it, some piano, some fiddle, something.
Enhances the image to the point where the audience is unaware consciously of the music. I've had that comment made over and over again, especially when the music is really well synchronized. They become unaware of it, but they would certainly be aware that it was not there if it were silent. And it enhances the image in a way that makes it more powerful.
One guy said you set the mood. Well, the music doesn't set the mood. The picture sets the mood. and then you go along with it. Look at a scene and an idea comes to you and it just flows from the end of your fingers. It's hard to explain what this is, but I don't think everybody has it. You've got to be able to imagine musically what you're seeing on the screen. That's one thing. Another thing is a knowledge of music so that what you're dreaming up and going to play fits the picture, and that could be something by Beethoven or Bizet or somebody or me.
There were compilation scores, there were improvised scores, and there were original scores. A lot of the film music from the silent era is based on the idea of the leitmotif out of, the Wagner system. You get that certainly in silent film music all the time, that there are various themes that are associated with certain ideas or certain people, and they keep on coming back.
The main thing for anyone scoring silent movies was not to run out of ideas. For those who accompanied these films on pianos or organs, they created their scores from what were known as fake books, collections of thousands of themes from songs and concert works.
There was a tremendous range of types of music, even from the beginning, I would guess, but certainly by the 20s, you had everything from just a piano to an organ, a 10-piece ensemble, or 5 or 6-piece ensemble, to a full orchestra, 26 pieces, 46 pieces, 90-some pieces, depending on how elaborate the flagship theater was of the chain. The way that the live orchestras kept in synchronization with the films in the silent era was that the scores were marked.
People will tell you that you sure made me sad. I said, well, it wasn't my intention, but if a sad scene, if in Lilac Time you cry, no question about it. And there are others, the great death scene in Wings. Now that's a big, big tearjerker. Originally, when we played Wings, we'd use My Buddy for that scene. Well, it wasn't available except for a large fee. So they said, you ought to find something that will do the job, and so that's what we did.
This is what changed it all. Sound on film. Once they could run a soundtrack down the side of the film, the scoring of silent movies with live musicians came to an abrupt end. Now they had movies that could talk and sing with live jazz bands, and a fellow who warned us, you ain't heard nothing yet.
Goodbye. Don't cry.
When moving films began to talk and Jolson made The Jazz Singer, it was an extraordinary moment in the history of motion pictures. When that film opened on October 6, 1927, the world changed. Very few people really had an idea of what the impact was going to be, especially for music and for songwriters.
Watch for the mail. I'll never fail. You don't get early and you know I'm in jail. Don't cry, Tootsie. Don't cry. Ha! Goodbye, Tootsie. I gotta bye.
Musicals existed, in my opinion, because at the end of the silent era, when they discovered they could have a soundtrack that was connected to the film rather than a live person or orchestra or organ, they said, we've got sound, what are we going to do with it? The answer was, the obvious answer, let's have some music. There is no defining line about what is a musical. Some people say a musical film is a film where they dance and sing a lot. Other people say a musical film is a film where they just sing a lot. And you can't pigeonhole a musical. I personally like dance, so for me, the kind of musical I like is where the people sing and dance.
The show must go on. Come rain, come shine, come snow, come sleet. The show must go on.
We knew he wanted to cheer the character that Gene was playing up in the scene. Well, to cheer somebody up, the obvious thing you do is to try to be funny. So we went in a rehearsal hall with Donald O'Connor without more of a specific idea than that and said, what do you do that make me laugh?
Make 'em laugh, make 'em laugh. Don't you know everyone wants to laugh?
We said to the prop man, we said, send a lot of props down. He said, the MGM prop room is as big as Macy's department store. You have to be more specific. Among the props was that dummy. And the dummy was sitting on the settee, and Donald looked at it and started flirting with it, and it started flirting with him. And then we used that idea and sort of put together some things he had done and changed them a bit, but used him at his best, like the trick. I can't say to somebody, can you run up the wall and do a flip? He said, I can run up the wall and do a flip.
Make 'em laugh. Make 'em laugh. Make 'em laugh.
That to me was the apex of of what we had to offer, you know, entertainment, you know, the musicals of the 40s and 50s. I wish I lived then. I would have given anything to have just been a cog in the wheel of like the Arthur Freed unit at MGM. We're making all those classic musicals so rich and so classy and so romantic and so perfect.
They truly don't make musicals like they used to. Except for the animated musical, which has become almost a new art form, thanks largely to Alan Menken and his late partner, Howard Ashman. There's Beauty and the Beast, Aladdin, and The Little Mermaid. Menken seems to have found the key to this particular treasure trove.
You always have to be pushing the story forward in song. It's because you are introducing an idea that simply can't be spoken. And you have to make sure that you know more at the end of the number than you did at the beginning of the number about the character or what the character wants. And you make stylistic choices and you make character choices. Who sings where. It's very pivotal. Essentially, when you write a number for an animated musical, you still have to make sure that number is stageable. You simply have to be able to picture how that character is going to move and react.
The seaweed is always greener in somebody else's lake. You dream about going up there, but that is a big mistake.
Howard was a perfectionist. I mean, until he got what he wanted, the frustration would like ooze from him. We had a great time, but still, no, it's... And we had to get that rhythm, just the rhythm. You know, da-ba-da-bum-bum-ba-dum-bum. That rolling feeling that it just, the beat never stopped. It wasn't like reggae. It was, yep, the bum 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 bum.
He can play the lings on the strings, the trouts rocking on the blackfish. He sings this belt and this front. They know where it's at. They know that blowfish blow.
When that song came together, it galvanized the entire project.
Each little snail here know how to wail here. That's why it's hotter under the water. Yeah, we in luck here, down in the muck here, under the sea.
For me, the excitement really does happen here. It all comes to life here. The tears happen here. Then it passes into many, many other hands, and in the end, I sit in the theater and I'm touched and moved, but generally, it's an extension, and a pretty close extension of what happened at the first moment here.
Songs were used not only in musicals, they could be used as part of the opening titles, over montages, and also to bring the picture to an end. They could set the mood, comment on the action, even be part of the drama. The most famous song to emerge from a movie is Laura, from the classic 1944 murder mystery of the same name. Except it wasn't written as a song. David Raksin wrote it as the haunting main theme, and if ever a theme haunted a movie, this one surely does.
Those scenes in the apartment of Laura, where the detective is alone going through her letters and things like that, would not have come off because what he's doing is very mundane. And you're trying to say that there's something stirring within him. I resorted to an old trick I did when I was a boy. When I was blocked while I was trying to write music, I would put up a poem or a picture or a photograph or perhaps a story on the piano, and I would read it while improvising, and that way I got past the block. In this case, I had a letter from a lady to whom I was married, and she'd written me this letter I couldn't figure out. So I put it on the piano, started to read it. It suddenly dawned upon me that she was saying, "This is the end," as in E-N-D. And it hit me very hard, and at that moment, the tune emerged.
With the success of Laura, it quickly became apparent that songs had a market value in promoting movies. Title songs became the rage in the 50s, with composers expected to write melodic themes that worked well with lyrics, and sung by the top singers of the day.
Thee is mine, though I don't...
Certain songs were constantly reused in movies because they were so insistent. They were so important. And also they were saleable. It was very easy to make a movie and title it after a famous song because already the producers had an advantage because they called a movie Body and Soul or called it The Man I Love or called it But Not For Me. They already had people that were going to come and see it just because they knew the song.
You build a little home just meant for two, from which I'll never roam for word with you, and so all else above, I'm waiting for the man that I love.
Henry Mancini didn't think of himself as a songwriter. He was a composer who could write any kind of music. But he did have a talent for writing songs, one in particular.
The music gave you the difference. Here is obvious New York. Here is obvious wealth, Tiffany's. But why is this harmonica playing this tune in the background? Why is this almost country song being played? So it's a great example of getting your audience primed at the very beginning of the picture.
See the world.
Audrey Hepburn was going to sing, you know, and the producers felt that maybe she couldn't do it. She wasn't capable of doing it. And it just happened that I had watched the Stanley Donen picture, Funny Face, on television a couple of nights before, and there's a scene, I think, in the library where she said, and she sang that very well. And so I went to the piano just like I did now. I said, well, I know she has the range from here to here, from here to here. So if I stay within that range, I'm good, because I know she'll sound normal. She won't have to strain to get the notes out. So those are the little things we have to go through.
Waiting round the bend, my huckleberry friend.
Once I got this, that was it. And then you go, simple.
The producer of the film originally hated the song and wanted it thrown out and fought. But that song clearly added to the success of the film.
She sat there and sang that song. It was absolutely enchanting. It wouldn't have been the same picture without it. I think going back to High Noon, it was wonderful storytelling. It was the right way to tell the story.
The theme from Dr. Zhivago certainly added to the success of that movie. Three Coins in the Fountain, that was a terrible movie, but they had a great song. That song won an Academy Award, and it made that movie a hit. That movie would have been nothing without that song.
Well, you never know. But songs are only a part of what movie music is about. Primarily, it's about orchestral music, background scoring which sets the scenes and helps focus the characters in the story. Alan Silvestri, recording the music for Richie Rich, finding out, along with director Donald Petrie, just how well the score fits the picture.
Between the splat and then the boom, boom, boom.
A few weeks before this scoring session, the composer and the director decided which portions of the film needed music and what the style of that music should be.
I just wish there was more of a because now we finally arrive on.
Right. Let's fool with it for a minute. We've got a couple options here. You know, I think one thing we can do is maybe move the tune from here.
Right. No matter how well it is written on paper, a score almost always needs a few on-the-spot adjustments to make it really effective.
And then we're going.
But when you go splat, I almost feel like you want to have a trombone or something.
See, maybe like some, if we had bells.
We are now going to cut bars 177 through 180, 4 bars.
Let's play an E major scale, glyphs.
Yeah, okay? It's going to be a short eighth note on the downbeat of 215, no ring off.
Bar 30, tacit.
Yeah. 2, 3, and...
That's getting better.
As much as music is part of movies today, it is hard to believe that in the early years of sound on film, the producers didn't think this kind of music was necessary. They were afraid audiences would wonder where the music was coming from. Well, they were proven wrong by a number of composers, one of whom was my uncle, Alfred Newman. In 1934, he scored a film that showed exactly what the added dimension of music can do. Our Daily Bread was the story of Depression-era farmers banding together to save their lands from drought by digging an irrigation ditch. A moment of triumph, as Uncle Alfred's music makes clear. It was in 1933 that Max Steiner wrote a score for King Kong that helped make that movie a masterpiece. Steiner's music not only made the huge beast frightening, but it did something else. It brought out the tenderness in Kong.
Look! The guard! Quick!
By 1938, when Eric Korngold wrote his rollicking score for The Adventures of Robin Hood, no producer dared ask, what's the use of music in movies?
Welcome to Sherwood, my lady.
But there were still times when they thought a movie didn't need music. When Paramount released The Lost Weekend in 1945, they didn't think this harrowing account of alcoholism needed a score. They wanted it to be realistic. The results were not what they expected. They found audiences snickering at Ray Milland's performance. The film was withdrawn with talk of it being permanently shelved. The producer then asked Miklos Rocha to score it. With Rocha's searing music, The Lost Weekend won the Oscar as the best film of the year. Ray Milland won an Oscar, and so did director Billy Wilder. Did Rocha? No. The ironic thing about the history of film music in Hollywood during the 30s and 40s is that it was mainly European in style. Steiner, Waxman, Tiomkin, Korngold, Rocha, all Europeans, and they were the dominant influence behind American film scoring.
At the same time, we were changing things because we had our own ideas of how things should be done. And a lot of us were guys who had made part of our career as jazz musicians. And we used those techniques and ideas in our film scores.
The first time I heard the opening of Streetcar Named Desire, I said, it's changed. It'll never be the same. His whole musical approach, harmonically and rhythmically and stylistically, it was him, and it was American.
Leonard Bernstein, who arguably wrote one of the best scores ever written for a movie, On the Waterfront, was that when asked why he didn't want to write any more scores for motion pictures, said, well, he didn't like the idea of spending a lot of time writing music that wasn't supposed to be heard.
That nonsense about music in films is not good if you can hear it is a little absurd. It's like saying dialogue is not good if you can hear it. And sometimes maybe it would be better if you didn't.
One of the great things for musicians about film is that the music is heard by so many millions of people. You could do concerts every night of your life, and you wouldn't reach the number of people that hear the music in a successful film.
There are very few rules in film music, because what film music has to do is something which is appropriate at a particular time to a particular situation. DeMille had some very simple and direct notions. Now, he saw music as a storytelling device. That was what he wanted. He didn't necessarily want the music to add another dimension to the film, but to really just support the storytelling.
Grandfather, have you got Rebecca?
No, I haven't got Rebecca.
The Exodus, first of all, is a very slow-moving scene in which, ironically, the Hebrews were being played by members of the Egyptian armed forces. I reacted to that by writing a piece of music which was sort of slow and majestic and lumbering, sort of like what we're seeing on the screen. DeMille hated it. And he said, it's too slow. I learned a great lesson, by the way. I said, well, Mr. DeMille, I'm just really catching what I'm seeing on the screen, you know. And he said, no, he says, the music's too slow. What's wrong is what's on the screen. What's on the screen is wrong. I want to speed it up. This is one of the things that music can do that really will change the character of a scene. He said, well, what we really want there is something that has the spirit of, he said, onward Christian soldiers, which of course was terribly funny because here we have these, 4,000 Hebrews being played by members of the Egyptian army marching off to onward Christian soldiers. Actually, in the event, I gave him something quite like that.
Music is probably the most, not probably, is the most emotional of all the art forms. It reaches inside the human feelings deeper than anything else.
It was here. The battlefield was here.
And Pat and I was trying to bring out to the audience what the man was feeling. Somehow the music made it more emphatic. And I think that's what music should do. That the character was a three-tiered character in my mind, and the three aspects I was going for was the warrior, the ancient, his belief in reincarnation, and the religious aspect.
Carthaginians were proud and brave, but they couldn't hold. They were massacred. Arab women stripped them of their tunics and their swords and lances. The soldiers lay naked in the sun. 2,000 years ago. I was here.
Basically, what we were trying to do is illustrate what is not visual and emphasize the emotional feelings.
What you try to do is to catch the spirit of the picture. If you do that, the music will blend with the rest of the picture as one of its components, and it will do good. Whereas if, on the other hand, you do something which goes overboard, which is too sentimental, or which is too loud in the wrong places, then you're in trouble.
Audiences may not recognize or understand musical form or musical notes or musical chords from one to the other, or even themes. But I think they can recognize emotionally certain things that Western society associates with certain kinds of harmonies. The form of the music in films is the film. It's a predetermined form. The first thing that I have to do as a film composer is obviously understand the drama of the film and translate it into musical drama. When the composer gets hold of the film, that's an incredibly insecure time for the filmmaker because he's lost control of the film for the first time. And the result is that we have to be psychologists and we have to be all kinds of things.
They are uncomfortable, and they have a right to be uncomfortable. They don't know what you're going to do to their picture. You may alter the delicate balances they think they've established, which actually may be true.
It doesn't bother me that directors aren't professional musicians. I think it would be worse if they were. They would say, why don't you put that in the key of B major instead of G? It would be more brilliant up a third. You know, we wouldn't want to hear that from a director, I don't think.
I'll give you an example with one of my favorite directors of all time, that's Kazan. Said to me he wanted something like C major. And I said, C major? I said, do you know what C major is? And he said, no. I played the scale, and I said, it's a scale. He said, oh, I thought it was like Schubert or Innocent. I said, well, why don't you tell me that, you see, instead of trying to talk to me musically. Talk to me dramatically, because that's your vocabulary, and I can translate it into my vocabulary.
John Milius, who directed and wrote Conan, has very strong musical ideas. He's one of the directors who's an absolute joy to work with, because he actually writes his scripts while he plays music. His most express direction to me was that he wanted the whole thing to sound as if it were a ritual that had been waiting 10,000 years to happen. It's set in a period which is undefined historically. There's no real time frame for it, and he always assumed it was 10,000 years before recorded history that this took place. So I knew that it had to have a tremendous amount of strength, which I primarily represented by a strange kind of rhythm, which suggested a sort of a cat-like ability to pounce at any moment, a very deadly kind of thing, but which had a very rhythmic, almost the insistence of a march.
Steven Spielberg is a director who actually likes music and admires it. The viewer in E.T. has had 2 hours of preparation for this emotional moment. And what happens musically is that all through the film you get a few notes of the theme here, maybe 4, 6 notes there, 8 notes over here, and we're in various keys and different tempos. We're preparing the audience. And then at this leave-taking at the end, where you have a sort of heartbreaking tear that has to be for survival, the music is presented in the full context, melodically and harmonically, so that you're now hearing what you've been waiting for 2 hours to hear. Some spiritual element is brought to the moment through the use of film that's added onto the film and added onto the scene in a way that the film seems to scream at us that it needs. I'm not sure I understand the process, but it's fascinating.
I react as an audience would react to a film, and somehow that is transferred somewhere and comes out musically. I can't tell you where it comes from or how it happens. It does.
It sort of evolves. And suddenly you'll think, ah, I've got the theme here. And then it spreads over the whole film. I like writing quite quirky music. It's a mixture of bitter, sweet, I think, is what I'm really interested in. I'm never interested in doing one thing that is utterly happy or utterly sad. That film is quite oddball. He was a sort of sad, innocent character who could perform and make people laugh and smile. It was his sadness and happiness, the happiness that he brought in his sadness. But it was the mixture of that that really influenced me in the score, I think.
Knock it off.
And it was a real chance for the music to let rip. I'm very interested in communicating musically with an audience. It's important to do so with melody. It was wonderful to write music which was there, saying, you know, I'm a character in this too. Hey, you know, I'm gonna dance along too and be part of that.
On the case of The Magnificent Seven, yes, it did need music. The film is basically slow. If you look at that film without music, you'll find it's quite a slow film. And I thought to myself that the most important contribution I could make to that film with music was to do the DeMille lesson. It was going to have tempo, there was going to be a kinetic addition. It's an engine that the film is running on. The reason it was so successful was that Western music before that tended to be kind of soppy, and I think it was just the raw energy of the Magnificent Seven. I mean, it's just raw energy is the word, and I think that's what intrigued people. It was a very, very different look at the West.
One film will offer a wonderful canvas for broad thematic and romantic statement. Another will be minuscule and impressionistic and introverted.
Finish the page and leave one space at the bottom.
Less noticed, perhaps, in a superficial sense, but maybe enormously powerful even on its own.
Any of us working in this field choose one thing over another. I'm not really sure. I don't know why. For me, it's more of a process of elimination. I'll try things that I know don't work. The stuff just slides off the movie.
The oddest choice I've ever done was in City Slickers, when there was a scene of a big stampede, which, you know, they do a temporary score for every movie, and they used a big Copland piece for that. And when it came time for me to write the music, I had like this ghost of Copland hanging over me. And I wasn't gonna, I tried to kid myself for a day, like, yes, I'm the new Aaron Copland.
Wow, look at him go! That is amazing! Stampede! We gotta get him! Get him! Whoa! Beautiful. Get that in the frame. Oh yeah, I got him.
I was scared. And I had been listening to an Aretha Franklin record on the way home from wherever I was that morning, and so You Gotta Think was on my mind, and so I just was kind of daydreaming, and I just started playing this Aretha Franklin thing just to kind of remind myself that I had talent and that I could play. At least I know how to play this Aretha Franklin record really good. And I was just playing, and the movie started running, because when you hit pause after 5 minutes, it'll start running again. And it was just like this little light bulb went off, like, you know what, this is kind of funny. I mean, everyone was kind of running around from the cattle with their hands up, and this music just fit.
I only want to do a movie that the music can really do something and really give it personality. The films I grew up on, the music was a major part of the personality. What you were seeing and what you were hearing took me out of my seat and put me into this world. When I was starting up in Batman, I kept asking, how are you going to use the Batman theme? Meaning the television theme. And Tim and I decided very early on to ignore it and never to refer to it.
Get those wonderful toys. Get the car.
Which one?
It was actually frustrating because it really hit me on the plane. And there I was stuck on a 747 with this musical idea and no way to express it. I can't take a napkin. I can't just go, you know, like Bernard Herrmann could do and get it all down. I have to have a keyboard. I'm just a writer who is forever chained to a keyboard. So I ended up taking this little tape recorder that I carry around with me all the time, mainly for songs, because I never want to forget, because I get ideas for songs at the worst possible time. And I'm used to like singing, and I sealed myself in the bathroom with a 747. And I started, this is the bass line. This is the counter melody. Here's the march. And I'm trying to like do this all on top of the roar, because you know how loud it is in some of those bathrooms on planes. There's like a roar going on.
Mini recorders are just the beginning of a composer's bag of tricks. Electronic instrumentation, computerized recording techniques, theater sound systems, technology keeps developing, giving composers possibilities they never had before.
For years, I was so frustrated. I was hearing things in my head, and I could never quite figure out how to get it out acoustically. And all of a sudden, the electronics started developing, and I could start, wow, this is wonderful.
One of the major assets of having a rig like this and utilizing it in film composition is the ability to take sounds that might have been recorded on location, or to record musicians who might not be able to travel to a recording studio. In this instance, these are samples that we actually recorded in Alaska. It gives us access to a whole wealth of new type sounds, particularly percussion instruments. We stick this into the computer, we make loops out of it, and then it's played on the recording session live with the orchestra.
I was one of the first that utilized electronics in an orchestra in Bob Altman's first film. It was called Countdown with Warner Brothers. And I used a synthesizer at that time, and everyone thought I was nuts. And they said, what are these wires all over the place? You know? But it was very important because it fit the film. The trip to the moon suddenly had sounds which you never heard.
See, the wonderful thing about scoring films for a composer is we can do anything we want to do. We're getting paid for it, we have a great orchestra to play it, and we write it and we hear it. I mean, that's a composer's dream. What more do you want?
There is one thing more, the life of film scores as recordings. During the 1930s and 40s, you seldom heard a film score outside of seeing the film. But in the 1950s, with the introduction of the long-playing record, that all changed. Hollywood discovered that music could sell movies and vice versa. Today, the record industry itself has become the source of music used in many films. The result is the compilation score, a film score composed mostly of recorded songs.
Head out on the highway, looking for adventure, and whatever comes our way.
I guess Easy Rider was the first example of a really solid rock soundtrack, and suddenly everybody realized, well, gee, you know, there's a whole generation out there that wants to see movies like Easy Rider and want rock soundtracks, and they want their music to be, what the music they're listening to be reflected in the movies that are being geared towards them. And I think that evolution has kept going.
That really have no value. In the end, she will surely know I wasn't born to follow.
It was the first one that was really a compilation score, and we've referred back to that many, many times. American Graffiti and films that followed that, which used a lot of recorded music, all sort of hung their hat on the same idea.
What did you say? Wait, what did you say? What did you say? Lollipop, lollipop, oh, lolly, 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 lollipop, lollipop, oh, lolly, 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 lollipop, lollipop, oh, lolly, lolly, lollipop.
What happened was that Rob felt as though he wanted some pop music in the movie to give these kids some extra life or whatever. So apparently what he did was he brought in records from his own collection and just started dubbing them in, trying them up against various scenes in the film. And when he finally showed the film to the studio, they were so impressed with the way the songs worked that they decided to change the title of the film. And they said, well, why don't we just call it Stand By Me?
I got him!
And so we put this little soundtrack album together, and there was no huge advance, no big deal about it. It was 10 or 12 oldies all put together and said Stand By Me on the cover. The film was released, and apparently people walked out of the theater and into Tower Records and asked for the soundtrack album, which wasn't available when the film was first released. And they had orders for thousands of soundtrack albums after the first weekend of release. So Atlantic very wisely decided to re-release the Benny King single, and they did, and it went back into the top 10. And MTV, who swore they would never play a Benny King single of Stand By Me, were calling us up saying, where's the video, where's the video?
It's so important to make someone happy.
It's an instant button that you press when you hear some of these songs. They bring up an immediate emotional response.
One heart to heart view. You sing to one. It's nice to meet you. Smile that cheers you. One face.
Like in Sleepless in Seattle, we were so lucky to discover that Jimmy Durante record because he kind of serves, even though it's just at the beginning and the end, it's like he's this little narrator for the movie. The songs and some of the classic artists have become like that, like a narrator.
Make someone happy. Make just someone happy. And you will be happy too.
What unfortunately has happened is now that it's become the trend for record companies to get involved all the time, and for almost every movie to have a soundtrack album. Compilation scores are existing when they might not really be appropriate for the film, stylistically, creatively, and might not even be what the director wants.
So I'm sitting there and I'm listening to the people from the record company and they say, this is going to be a hit song, that's going to be a hit song. And I'm not saying anything, I'm just smiling and I say, yes, yes, yes. And fine, great, let it all happen. And of course, I'm still looking at the charts. I haven't seen this hit song on the charts, nor in my album either. That's the wrong approach. They had nothing. It was nothing to do with the film and advancing the story of the film or the emotional content of the film.
Each time there's a success, it triggers the next movie to want that. Whereas you're going back to King Kong or those movies, you wouldn't sit there and go, okay, like to King Kong today, they'd say, okay, listen, who can we get to sing the title song King Kong? Okay, let me see who's in now, and who's our audience for this movie? 13-year-olds? Okay, what's that rap group? 13-year-olds are buying rap today, aren't they? Let's get a rap group and have them do King Kong. King Kong's a man, let's get him there. Okay, wait a minute, but wait, will we get it played on MTV? What do you think? Can we get, okay, fine, that's a group. We're going to do King Kong title song. Now, what about when he's holding her off the building? Can we do a love song there, maybe? Maybe it's a ballad, because we need to have a ballad to get on VH1. I mean, that would be the difference.
The best song soundtracks are the ones that are interpretive, that become part of really an indelible part of the story-making process of the film. So if you hear a song even outside of the film, it recalls the emotion that you felt during seeing the movie.
We will always have songs and pictures. There are those who want to make the successful soundtrack and sell 2 zillion million albums, and those who want to tell the story of the picture and make it a little bit better.
Whether it's rock or rhapsodic, it's all music. It can all work in a picture, provided it's the right music at the right time. So why do movies need music? Because without it, something would be missing. Call it the heartbeat or the spirit of the film, call it the tempo or mood or time and place of the story. Music adds a dimension that can only come from music. So the next time you watch a movie, listen.